Now, as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink and drink all of it, for this is my blood of the covenant. It is the covenant of my blood." The covenant, which is poured out for you for the forgiveness of sins. And then Jesus says, "I tell you, I will not drink again of the fruit of this vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." And when they had sung a hymn, and this is a very important statement, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Is it not amazing that the Lord Jesus gathered together this group of people, and he brought them into a confined space, set high up on a hill? The place is called the Upper Room, and it sits very high up. And the thought occurred to me that the Temple Mount, Mount Moriah, the place of sacrifice, the seat of God's throne forever, that what took place in the upper room was set on the highest plane overlooking the highest authority, not down on it. I'm showing you a symbolical picture here. Jesus took this group of people and he took them into this church room. The upper room was literally that. It was a room. If you would beg my pardon, it was like a church. It was like this group of people who were out there. They were in the world. They were in the marketplace. They were in their homes. They were dealing with fear. They had questions. They didn't know what was going to happen next. They bore witness to strange behavior. They even saw religious people get angry and side with governments and brandish swords. They saw those same religious people stand up in the temple courts and give speeches that had nothing to do with Jesus. They watched this. They watched what was going on in their world. They watched the governments. They watched their next door neighbors. These were Christian people. They were Christ followers. And Jesus said, for just a moment, I'm going to show you tomorrow's best news. You need to know this. You people need to know this. Are you listening? Are you paying attention? And to get you to pay attention, I'm going to pull you together and I'm going to put some walls around you. I'm going to gather you on the inside of the church where I can speak to you. Where for just a few moments, perhaps I can have your undivided attention. I'm going to ask you to just withdraw and come together. And so it is that these Christ followers withdrew for just a while into the upper room. They came inside. They left the rain to fall outside. They just for a moment laid aside their questions about when, how, what, or why. And they came to listen to what Jesus had to say to them. Why did Jesus gather his disciples? That's the question I began to ask myself. And I share with you 4 thoughts. I think Jesus gathered his disciples, first of all, because he knew himself. It was all about him. Jesus wanted them to look at him without distraction. So maybe, I don't know, he put 4 walls around them. Jesus knew himself. Jesus knew that he was the Son of God, slain from before the foundation of the world. Jesus knew why he left his throne on high and came to this world. Jesus knew that. In fact, Jesus knew that he was God. He told them, he said, "You see me? You see God." Jesus knew that he was the mediator between them and God. He knew that. Why did he gather them? Just to have a little ceremony? Go through some kind of ritual? Perform some kind of religious rite? Why did Jesus gather these people? I suppose in many ways this really could be the only point of it. Because he was Jesus. I think Jesus wanted them to know above anything else that actually nothing else matters. Because he knew this human heart that his disciples, he knew about it. He knew how torn they were and how they looked for the right reason to give their money. And when they did, they would give it with strings attached. And how much they would get upset because somebody stepped on their toes or because somebody didn't say the right thing. He knew that, and he said, "You come together. Gather yourselves. And just look at me. Listen to me. Hear me. And then obey me." Why did he gather them? Because he knew himself. But there's a second reason. I think Jesus gathered this group of people because he knew them. How much Jesus knew them. After all, he created them. He made them. He knit them together. He determined the breath of life in them at the very moment of conception, because he is life. And he knew all about them. He knew their personality dispositions, their hot buttons. He knew their struggles. He knew the grief of their hearts. He knew the questions that they had. Jesus gathered them together because he knew them. But you know, there's something even more important than that. I think Jesus gathered them because he loved them. He really did. From Peter to Matthew to John to Mark, he loved them. He loved them the way they were made. He loved them, evidently, with all of their ways about them. He loved them. Why, I don't know. They were quite a bunch. These were supposed to be the spiritual leaders. They sure behaved strangely sometimes. And it wasn't over yet. Some of them didn't even realize how strange they were going to behave. So he just gathered them in the upper room. He gathered them because he knew himself, because he knew them. He gathered them because he really loved them. Why does Jesus love us like this? Why does Jesus love me? But there's a fourth reason he gathered them. He gathered them, I think, because he commissioned them. He commissioned them. Do you know it was to those he knew and those he loved that he said, "You leave here and go out into the world." The world? You mean where we just came from? You mean we got to go back home? You mean we got to go back into the traffic? You mean we got to go back into our disease? You mean we got to go back into our stocks and bonds? Jesus said, "Go, you, go." He gathered them because he had commissioned them. He called them in from, and then he sent them out to. He commissioned them because they were his disciples. And he loved them. And he knew them. And he knew everything about out there. He got it. And Jesus wanted them to be able to go back out into the world with tomorrow's best news. Hello, my friends. Thank you for watching the Encouraging Word on YouTube. If you were blessed by this message, would you like it, comment, and perhaps would you subscribe and get connected with us? In fact, if you want to discover more about the Encouraging Word, visit our website at tewonline.org. God bless you today.